I wasn't even supposed to be in Chicago that weekend. The whole trip had been a last-minute disaster from the start. My flight got delayed twice, my luggage disappeared somewhere between Denver and O'Hare, and by the time I finally dragged myself into the downtown hotel lobby, it was almost midnight and I looked like I'd survived a small war. All I wanted was a shower and 8 hours of unconsciousness before the conference started the next morning. Instead, the woman at the front desk looked at her monitor, frowned, and said the words that completely changed my weekend. "Looks like there's been a booking issue." I rubbed my eyes. "What kind of issue?" "The hotel is overbooked because of the marathon this weekend. We only have one room left available." "Okay," I said slowly. "Then give me the room." Her awkward smile should have warned me. "There's already someone assigned to it." I stared at her. She stared back. "You're joking." "I'm really sorry, sir." I actually laughed from exhaustion. "So what exactly are you suggesting here?" Before she could answer, a voice behind me cut in. "You've got to be kidding me." I turned around and saw him for the first time. Tall, broad shoulders, dark blonde hair pushed back like he'd been running his hands through it all day. Hoodie sleeves shoved up to his elbows. A duffel bag hanging from one shoulder. And he looked just as irritated as I felt. "That room is mine," he told the receptionist. She gave him the same apologetic look. "Mr. Vincent Harper?" "Yes, I know. But due to the system error." "System error?" he repeated. "I booked this place 3 weeks ago. And Mr. Kyle Bennett also has a confirmed reservation." Great. Now we were both pissed. I sighed and leaned against the counter. "Look, I don't care if it's a closet at this point. I just need somewhere to sleep." Vincent glanced at me for the first time properly, like he was finally noticing I existed and wasn't just part of the problem. His eyes flicked over me quickly. Tired hoodie, wrinkled jeans, messy hair from traveling all day. Then back to my face. He exhaled sharply through his nose. "Same." The receptionist lowered her voice carefully, like she knew we were both one inconvenience away from losing it. "We can fully refund both of you and help find another hotel tomorrow morning. But tonight, everything nearby is booked because of the marathon." Silence. I already knew where this was going and I hated it. Vincent looked at me again. I looked back. "Absolutely not." The receptionist smiled nervously. "The room has 2 beds." "Of course it does," Vincent muttered. I rubbed my face. "You're seriously asking strangers to share a room?" "It's only for 2 nights," she said quickly. 2 nights. I nearly groaned out loud. Vincent shifted his duffel higher onto his shoulder. "Do I at least get compensated for this?" "Yes, sir. Both of you will receive meal vouchers and a partial refund." He looked unimpressed. Honestly, same. But it was midnight. I was exhausted. And the idea of trying to find another hotel in downtown Chicago during marathon weekend sounded like hell. Vincent looked at me again, clearly trying to decide if I looked serial killer-ish. I was doing the same thing. Finally, he sighed. "Fine." I blinked. "That easy?" "No," he said flatly. "I'm just too tired to care anymore." "Fair." 10 minutes later, we were riding the elevator in complete silence. The awkwardness was unbearable already. I snuck a glance at him while pretending to check my phone. Up close, he was even more annoyingly attractive. Probably around my age. Maybe 24 or 25. Strong jawline. Slight stubble. Tired eyes. The kind of guy who looked good, even exhausted. Which was irritating. Especially because he seemed completely unaware of it. The elevator dinged. We walked down the hallway together like divorced parents forced to attend the same school event. Vincent unlocked the room first, pushed the door open, and immediately stopped walking. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." I stepped inside behind him. 1 bed. Not 2. 1 king-sized bed sitting smugly in the middle of the room. I actually laughed because my brain couldn't process anything else. "You're laughing?" Vincent turned toward me. "What else am I supposed to do? This hotel is unbelievable." He dropped his duffel onto the floor and immediately pulled out his phone. "I'm calling downstairs." "Good luck," I muttered, already collapsing into the chair near the window. He paced the room while the phone rang. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. They're ignoring me. Probably hiding. He shot me a look like he wasn't sure whether to be annoyed or amused. Then he sighed and dropped onto the edge of the bed. For a second, neither of us said anything. The room suddenly felt way too small. I stood up. "Look, I can sleep on the floor." Vincent frowned immediately. "No, it's fine." "It's not. I'm not making you sleep on the floor because the hotel screwed up." I crossed my arms. "Then what's your solution?" He looked at the bed, then at me. Then back at the bed. We survive. I laughed again despite myself. That finally got the smallest smile out of him. It changed his entire face. And somehow that made things worse. Because now I noticed how attractive he really was. Awesome. Exactly what I needed. We spent the next 30 minutes trying to pretend the situation wasn't weird. I showered first while Vincent ordered food through room service. Then we switched. When he came back out of the bathroom wearing gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt, my brain immediately decided to become my enemy. Because apparently exhaustion wasn't enough. Now I also had to survive sharing a room with a ridiculously hot stranger. Cool. Very cool. I focused aggressively on my burger. Vincent sat across from me at the tiny table near the window. So, he said after a minute, why are you in Chicago? Marketing conference. Ouch. Exactly. That earned another quiet laugh from him. You? Architectural Design Expo. That sounds way more interesting. It's mostly rich people arguing about chairs. I snorted into my drink. The tension eased a little after that. Not fully, but enough that conversation started coming naturally. His name was Vincent, 26, lived in Seattle, worked for a small architecture firm, and apparently had the driest sense of humor I'd ever encountered. By 1 in the morning, we were both exhausted enough that reality finally hit us again. The bed. Vincent looked at it like it had personally offended him. Yep, we could do the pillow wall thing. I raised an eyebrow. The what? You know, divide the bed. You've done this before? He looked horrified. No. Sure. He rolled his eyes, grabbing one of the extra pillows and throwing it directly at my face. I caught it, laughing. And for the first time since meeting him, Vincent smiled fully. It hit me unexpectedly hard. Because underneath all the sarcasm and irritation, he actually seemed easy to be around. Comfortable. Dangerously comfortable. Which became a problem about 10 minutes later when we both ended up lying in the same bed, separated by exactly one very pathetic pillow barrier. The lights were off. The room was quiet. And I suddenly became hyper-aware of everything. The sound of his breathing. The warmth of him beside me. The faint scent of his shampoo. This is weird, Vincent muttered into the darkness. Very. Another pause. Then quietly. You snore. No. You hesitated. I was thinking. That means yes. I smirked into the darkness. Guess you'll find out. He let out a low laugh. And somewhere between the exhaustion, the darkness, and the strange intimacy of sharing a bed with someone I'd only met hours ago, something shifted. I woke up sometime around 3 in the morning because the pillow wall was gone. Not metaphorically. Gone. 1 second I was half asleep, tangled in hotel blankets, and the next I realized something warm was pressed against my arm. Vincent. At some point during the night, he'd rolled closer. Really close. I stayed completely still, my eyes barely open in the darkness. His back was against my shoulder now, his body heat seeping through the thin fabric of my t-shirt. One of his arms was trapped awkwardly between us, and his breathing was slow and deep with sleep. For a second, my exhausted brain short-circuited, because this didn't feel like accidentally sharing a hotel bed anymore. It felt intimate. Dangerously intimate. I carefully shifted, trying not to wake him, but the mattress moved slightly beneath us. Vincent made a quiet sound in his sleep and shifted backward instinctively, directly into me. My entire body went rigid. Jesus Christ. Now I could feel all of him pressed against me, his back against my chest, his leg tangled loosely with mine. I stared at the ceiling in complete silence. This was fine. Totally normal. People accidentally cuddled strangers all the time, right? My brain immediately answered, no, dumbass. I exhaled slowly through my nose, trying to relax. Then Vincent mumbled something unintelligible and tilted his head slightly toward me. His hair brushed my jaw. That almost killed me. I closed my eyes hard. This was torture. Because the worst part wasn't that he was attractive. The worst part was that he felt good there. Warm. Comfortable. Like he belonged against me somehow. And that thought was dangerous enough that I immediately tried to shove it away. Eventually, exhaustion won again. The next thing I knew, sunlight was spilling across the room, and Vincent was staring directly at me. I blinked awake. For one horrifying second, neither of us moved. Then realization hit both of us simultaneously. We were practically wrapped around each other. Vincent jerked backward so fast, he nearly fell off the bed. Oh my God. I sat up immediately. I can explain. You can explain why you were spooning me. I was not spooning you. You absolutely were. You rolled into me. He pointed accusingly. You accepted it. I stared at him. Then, against all logic, I started laughing. Vincent looked offended for about 3 seconds before he laughed too, collapsing back against the headboard. This is a nightmare, he groaned. A little. You better not tell anyone about this. Relax, your secret's safe with me. He narrowed his eyes. You're enjoying this way too much. Honestly, maybe I was, which should have worried me more than it did. About an hour later, we were downstairs getting breakfast with our hotel meal vouchers like two traumatized survivors of a natural disaster. Vincent looked unfairly good for someone who'd just woken up. Meanwhile, I looked like sleep deprivation in human form. Why do you look so functional? I asked while stirring terrible hotel coffee. I'm naturally superior. Hate that for me. He smirked into his cup. The restaurant was crowded because of marathon weekend, people everywhere in athletic gear and expensive sneakers. Vincent leaned back in his chair. So how long's your conference thing today? Until 5. That bad? I'd rather be punched repeatedly. Fair. What about you? Panel discussions until 4. Then networking. I made a face. Corporate flirting. Exactly. For some reason, conversation with him had already become easy. Too easy. Like we'd known each other longer than 12 hours. Which was probably why I didn't notice the waitress approaching until she smiled at us. You two are cute together. I nearly inhaled coffee. Vincent choked on his drink. The waitress looked completely unbothered. Need anything else? Both of us answered immediately. No. She walked away smiling. Silence. Vincent stared at the table. I stared at the table. Then simultaneously. She thought we were together. That was weird. We looked at each other. And then Vincent laughed first. Really laughed. Head tilted back slightly, shoulders shaking. It was unfair how attractive that was. I shook my head. You know what's annoying? What? You'd absolutely be the hot one in the relationship. He looked genuinely offended. Excuse me. You heard me. That implies you think about this hypothetically. I think about lots of terrible things. Vincent leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. And in this imaginary scenario, he said carefully, what exactly would you bring to the relationship? I stared at him. Was he flirting? No. Probably not. Maybe. Dangerous territory. I'm charming, I said finally. You're annoying. Same thing. His mouth twitched. Then his phone buzzed. The moment broke instantly. Vincent checked the screen and sighed. Work. Tragic. Meet back here later, he asked casually. Since apparently we live together now. The words hit me harder than they should have. I shrugged carefully. Sure. But as he stood up and walked toward the elevators, I caught myself watching him. The way his shoulders moved beneath his hoodie. The relaxed confidence in his stride. And worst of all, I realized I was already looking forward to seeing him again later. Which was stupid, because this was temporary. 2 nights. That was it. Except the problem started around noon. Because once I noticed Vincent, I couldn't stop noticing him. Even during my conference panels, my brain kept replaying little moments from the morning. His laugh. His sleepy voice. The feeling of waking up wrapped around him. I hated how much space he was suddenly taking up in my head. By the time I finally escaped the conference that evening, my social battery was completely dead. I headed back to the hotel expecting silence. Instead, I walked into the room and froze. Vincent was standing near the window wearing only sweatpants. No shirt. Cool. Awesome. Exactly what I needed after a full day of trying not to think about him. He turned casually when he heard the door open. Oh hey. Meanwhile, my brain was busy malfunctioning. Because holy shit. He was built. Not obnoxiously gym-obsessed. Just broad shoulders, toned stomach, defined arms. The kind of body that looked unfair in normal lighting. And apparently hotel sunset lighting was actively trying to ruin my life. I forced myself to maintain eye contact. You trying to kill me? Vincent blinked. What? Put a shirt on, man. Realization crossed his face slowly. Then came the smirk. Oh no. You think I look good. I dropped my bag onto the floor. Don't make this weird. You already made it weird. You're literally standing there looking like a Calvin Klein ad. He laughed, grabbing a shirt from his bag and pulling it on slowly, which somehow made it worse. Better? He asked innocently. No. His grin widened. And for the first time since meeting him, I realized something dangerous. Vincent liked getting reactions out of me. A lot. By the second night, sharing the room didn't feel awkward anymore. That should have been a warning sign. We ended up ordering takeout after our conferences, both too exhausted to go anywhere. Vincent sat cross-legged on the bed with his laptop open while I leaned against the headboard beside him scrolling through my phone. At some point, our knees started touching. Neither of us moved away. The TV played quietly in the background, some terrible reality dating show Vincent had insisted on watching ironically. "You are way too invested in this," I said as he pointed aggressively at the screen. "That guy is obviously cheating. You've known these people for 7 minutes. And I'm already emotionally involved." I laughed, shaking my head. Vincent looked over at me for a second. Not at the TV. At me. His smile softened slightly, like he'd forgotten what he was saying halfway through. Then his gaze dropped briefly to my mouth. It lasted maybe a second, but I noticed. And judging by the way he immediately looked back at the TV afterward, he realized I noticed too. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Subtle, but there. I cleared my throat. "You want to switch sides? Your leg's practically on top of mine." Complaining? No. Thought so. I turned toward him slowly. "You flirt with everybody like this?" Vincent looked genuinely amused. "You think I'm flirting? You know what? Never mind. No, tell me. You're annoying." That's not an answer. I tossed a fry at him. He caught it effortlessly and grinned. Violence now? Damn. I tried focusing on the TV again, but I could feel him beside me. The warmth of his shoulder brushing mine. The way his thigh pressed lightly against my leg. And worst of all, he wasn't pulling away. Neither was I. The show ended eventually, but neither of us moved to turn off the TV. The room dimmed into soft blue light from the screensaver bouncing across the walls. Outside, downtown Chicago glowed through the huge hotel windows. Vincent stretched beside me with a low groan. "I'm exhausted." Same. But neither of us got up. There was this weird tension now. Not uncomfortable. Just charged. Like we were both aware of something and pretending we weren't. Vincent finally closed his laptop and set it on the nightstand. Then he looked at me again. Longer this time. "You know what's weird?" he asked quietly. "What?" "It feels like I've known you longer than 2 days." My chest tightened unexpectedly. "Yeah," I admitted. "Kinda does." He leaned back against the headboard beside me, close enough that our shoulders stayed touching. "You ever get that thing," he said slowly, "where you meet someone and it's just easy?" I looked over at him. His expression had changed completely. Less teasing now. More open. More honest. "Sometimes," I said carefully. Vincent nodded once, eyes still on mine. Then his phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand, completely destroying the moment. He groaned dramatically and grabbed it. I looked away immediately, trying to ignore how fast my heart was beating. Vincent checked the screen and sighed. "My ex." That word hit harder than it should have. I tried sounding casual. "You gonna answer?" "Nah." "You ignored him that fast?" Vincent shrugged, tossing the phone back down. "There's a reason he's my ex." I hesitated. Then before I could stop myself, "Him." Vincent looked at me, then slowly smiled. "Oh. Oh no. You didn't know?" I stared at him. "You're bi," he said easily. "Mostly." My brain fully stopped functioning. Because suddenly every interaction from the last 2 days rearranged itself in my head. The flirting. The looks. The tension. The way he kept touching me casually. And now he was watching my reaction carefully. "You okay there, Kyle?" I laughed nervously. "You could have warned me." About being into guys? About being into guys while looking like that. Vincent actually blushed a little at that, which somehow made him even hotter. Unbelievable. He leaned his head back against the wall. "You never mentioned anything either." I froze. Shit. That was true. Vincent turned toward me slightly. So what?" His smile turned slow and dangerous. "Kyle." I rubbed a hand down my face. "Yeah, okay. I'm gay." "Thought so." "You thought so? You checked me out like 6 times yesterday." "I absolutely did not." Vincent burst out laughing. "You stared at my abs for a full 10 seconds. That could mean anything." It really couldn't. I shoved his shoulder lightly. He grabbed my wrist automatically, and everything stopped. The movement had been instinctive, but now his hand was wrapped around my wrist. Warm, firm, close. Neither of us moved. The air between us suddenly felt too thick, too quiet. Vincent's eyes dropped briefly to my mouth again. My pulse jumped hard enough that I felt it in my throat. This was happening. Oh my God. His thumb shifted slightly against my skin, just enough to make my entire body hyper-aware. "You know," he said softly, "for two strangers forced into the same hotel room." I swallowed hard. "Yeah. We're handling it surprisingly badly." I laughed quietly, but it came out shaky. Vincent noticed. Of course he noticed. His expression changed slightly after that. Softer, more careful, like he was trying to decide whether to cross a line. And honestly, so was I. My eyes flicked to his mouth before I could stop myself. Vincent inhaled slowly. Then suddenly there was a loud knock on the hotel door. We jumped apart like we'd been electrocuted. I stared at the wall. Vincent stared at the ceiling. Another knock. Room service. Neither of us had ordered room service. Vincent stood up first, running a hand through his hair. I swear to God this hotel is trying to ruin my life. I laughed into my hands while he went to answer the door. But underneath the humor, my heart was still racing. Because for one terrifying second, I really thought he was about to kiss me. The room service guy handed Vincent a bottle of champagne meant for another room. Wrong delivery. Of course. At that point, it honestly felt personal. We didn't order this, Vincent said. The guy checked the receipt, frowned, apologized 3 times, then told us to keep it because the order couldn't be taken back anyway. The second the door shut, Vincent looked at the bottle in his hand. Then at me. This hotel is insane. I was still sitting on the bed, trying to recover from the almost kiss. Maybe it's haunted. He snorted softly. But neither of us mentioned what had almost happened before the knock. And somehow that made it worse. Vincent set the champagne on the table near the window. You drink? After this weekend? Absolutely. 5 minutes later, we were sitting on the floor beside the bed, passing glasses back and forth while city lights flickered outside. The atmosphere had changed completely now. Less joking, less pretending. Every glance lasted a little too long. Every accidental touch felt intentional. Vincent leaned back against the side of the mattress, one knee bent. So, he said casually, how long have you known that I'm gay? Yeah. I shrugged. Since high school, probably. You. He rolled the champagne glass slowly between his fingers. College. I looked over at him. You dated guys? A few. He smirked slightly. Dated girls too. Greedy. Exactly. I laughed quietly. Then he tilted his head toward me. What about you? I hesitated. One serious relationship. How'd it end? I stared down at my glass. He cheated. Vincent's expression shifted immediately. Seriously? Caught him with another guy. Jesus. Yeah. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Vincent said quietly, that's his loss. The way he said it made my chest tighten, because he sounded sincere. And suddenly the room felt smaller again. I took another sip of champagne. You always this smooth. I'm actually nervous right now. That surprised me enough to make me laugh. You? Nervous? Vincent looked over at me carefully. You have no idea what you're doing to me, do you? My heartbeat stumbled. The air disappeared from the room. I tried to answer casually, but my voice betrayed me immediately. What exactly am I doing? Vincent held my gaze for a second too long. Then his eyes dropped briefly to my mouth again. You really want to ask that? Okay. Yeah, definitely flirting now. My pulse was going insane. The worst part? I loved it. I set my glass down carefully before I dropped it. Vincent watched the movement, then watched me. The silence stretched. Heavy. Charged. And somehow neither of us looked away. You know what's funny? He said softly. What? If the hotel hadn't screwed up, we probably never would have spoken. I smiled slightly. You would have checked me out in the lobby. He laughed immediately. But true. Vincent leaned closer, just slightly. Maybe. That one word nearly killed me. Because now he was close enough that I could see every detail of his face. The faint scar near his jaw. The way his lashes looked unfairly long. The tiny shift in his breathing when he looked at me. And then he said quietly, can I ask you something? Sure. If I kissed you right now, his voice dropped lower. Would you stop me? Every thought disappeared from my brain. Completely gone. I stared at him. Vincent didn't move. Didn't pressure. He just waited. And somehow that made it more intense. Because I realized he actually cared about the answer. My mouth felt dry suddenly. No, I admitted softly. Something changed in his expression instantly. Relief. Desire. Nervousness. All at once. Then Vincent reached up slowly and touched my jaw. Just his fingertips at first. Gentle. Careful. Like he was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. God, I couldn't. His thumb brushed lightly against my cheek. You're really pretty, he murmured. The compliment hit me embarrassingly hard. Before I could respond, Vincent leaned in, slow enough that I felt every second of it. Then his mouth touched mine, and everything in my body lit up. It wasn't rough, wasn't rushed, just warm and soft and careful in a way that made my chest ache immediately. I kissed him back without even thinking. Vincent made the quietest sound against my mouth, like he'd been holding his breath waiting for this. Then his hand slid into my hair gently, and suddenly the kiss deepened. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers onto the carpet unnoticed. Because holy shit, Vincent kissed like he meant it. Slow at first, then hungrier. His other hand settled against my waist, pulling me closer until my knee bumped against his. I could feel his heartbeat. Fast. Mine was worse. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathing unevenly, neither of us moved very far away. Vincent rested his forehead lightly against mine. Well, he said quietly. I laughed shakily. Yeah, that happened. Definitely happened. His thumb brushed my side slowly beneath my shirt, and that tiny movement almost destroyed whatever sanity I had left. Vincent looked at me carefully. You okay? I nodded immediately. More than okay. The honesty in my voice made him smile. Not teasing this time. Soft. Real. Then he kissed me again, and this time there was nothing careful about it. His hand tightened at my waist as I leaned into him fully, my fingers grabbing his shirt automatically. The tension from the last 2 days snapped all at once. Every look, every touch, every almost moment, all of it crashed together. Vincent kissed me deeper, slower, like he wanted to memorize it. And honestly, I wanted that too. My back hit the edge of the bed before I even realized we were moving. Vincent pulled away just enough to look at me. His expression was flushed now, eyes darker, hair messy from my hands. You have no idea, he said quietly, how hard it's been not touching you all weekend. That sentence went straight through me. I grabbed the front of his shirt and kissed him again immediately, which apparently answered that problem. The kiss turned reckless after that. Not messy, not rushed, just impossible to stop. Vincent's hands kept finding me like he'd already memorized where they belonged, one sliding into my hair while the other stayed firm against my waist. And every time he kissed me deeper, my brain stopped working a little more. I barely noticed when we shifted fully onto the bed. Only noticed Vincent above me afterward, breathing hard, staring at me like he couldn't believe this was happening either. Your trouble, he murmured. I laughed softly, still holding onto the front of his shirt. You started this. You looked at me like that first. Like what? His mouth twitched. Like you wanted me. That hit way too accurately. Because yeah, I did. Especially now. The room felt warm suddenly, heavy with tension and hotel darkness and the glow of the city outside the windows. Vincent brushed his thumb slowly across my jaw again. Still gentle. Still giving me room to stop this. Which only made me want him more. I tilted my head up and kissed him first this time. Vincent inhaled sharply against my mouth before kissing me back immediately, stronger now, one hand bracing beside my head. The mattress dipped beneath us. My fingers slid into his hair automatically, and the sound he made at that nearly ruined me. Not loud, just quiet enough to feel intimate. Real. When we finally broke apart again, Vincent rested his forehead against mine, both of us trying to breathe normally and failing. This is insane, he said quietly. A little. We met 2 days ago, and yet here you are. His laugh came out low and breathless. Then his gaze dropped again, not just to my mouth this time. Lower. Slow enough that my pulse jumped immediately. Kyle. The way he said my name should have been illegal. Yeah. You're really attractive, you know that? I groaned softly, covering my face with one hand. You can't say stuff like that right now. Why not? Because I already can't think straight. Vincent smiled against my jaw. Close enough that I felt it. That's kind of my fault. Definitely your fault. He kissed the corner of my mouth once, softer this time. Then he rolled onto his side beside me instead of pushing things further. That surprised me enough that I looked over immediately. Vincent stared up at the ceiling for a second before glancing back at me. What? I thought this was heading somewhere else. It can, he said honestly. I just don't want to rush you. That hit harder than the kissing somehow. Because he meant it. There wasn't pressure in him. No expectation. Just warmth. Interest. Care. And suddenly this didn't feel like some random connection caused by staying in the same hotel anymore. Which honestly terrified me a little. Vincent must have noticed the shift in my expression because his face softened. Hey, he said quietly. Don't do that. Do what? Get in your head. I looked away briefly. I'm trying not to. He studied me for a second, then carefully reached over and laced his fingers with mine. Simple. Small. But somehow more intimate than anything else so far. You know what I think? He asked. What? I think you spend too much time expecting people to leave. The words landed directly in my chest. Too accurate. Way too accurate. I swallowed hard. You got all that from 2 days? Vincent smiled faintly. You're not hard to read. That's unfortunate. Not really. The room went quiet again after that. Not awkward quiet. Comfortable quiet. The kind that settles naturally between people who already understand each other more than they expected to. Outside, Chicago traffic glowed beneath the windows. Inside, Vincent's thumb moved slowly against my hand absent-mindedly while we lay there side by side. And honestly, that scared me more than the kissing did. Because I liked this. Too much. Eventually Vincent sat up slightly. Okay. Okay, what? If we keep staring at each other like this, I'm absolutely kissing you again. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. I laughed quietly. Then he kissed me anyway. Short this time. Soft. The kind of kiss that somehow felt even more dangerous because it wasn't rushed or desperate. It felt natural, like we'd already done this 100 times before. When he pulled back, I caught myself smiling stupidly. Vincent noticed immediately. Oh, you're gone. What? You like me? I rolled my eyes. Relax. Kyle, you're smug for someone stuck in a hotel booking disaster. Best booking mistake of my life. That made my stomach flip embarrassingly fast. I grabbed one of the pillows and shoved it directly into his face. Vincent laughed into it, pulling it away easily. You're blushing. Shut up. You are. I turned away dramatically. A second later, I felt him move closer behind me on the bed. Then his arm slid loosely around my waist. Warm. Easy. Like it belonged there. You complaining? He murmured near my ear. My entire body reacted instantly, which, judging by his quiet laugh, he definitely noticed. Yeah, I muttered. This is definitely a problem. Vincent pressed one lazy kiss just below my jaw. Doesn't sound like one. I don't think either of us slept much after that. Not because anything else happened. Just because every time I started drifting off, I became aware of Vincent beside me again. His arm around my waist. His breathing against the back of my neck. The occasional lazy brush of his fingers against my stomach like he was half asleep and instinctively reaching for me. And every single time, my heart reacted like an idiot. At one point around 2 in the morning, I shifted slightly onto my back. Vincent immediately lifted his head sleepily. You okay? The concern in his voice caught me off guard. Yeah, I whispered. Why? You moved. I laughed quietly into the darkness. That's all it takes. Apparently. Then, without hesitation, he rested his head against my chest, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stared at the ceiling for a second, completely stunned, because nobody had ever been this casually affectionate with me before. Not like this. Not without hesitation. Not without making it feel complicated. Vincent just did things. Touched me because he wanted to. Stayed close because he liked being close. It shouldn't have affected me as much as it did. But it did. A lot. You're thinking too loud again, he murmured against my shirt. How do you even know when I'm thinking? You go all tense. I sighed softly. You notice too much. Occupational hazard. What does architecture have to do with reading people? Nothing, he admitted. I just like paying attention to you. Yeah, that sentence absolutely destroyed me. I looked down at him in the darkness. You can't keep saying things like that. Vincent tilted his head slightly, his chin resting against my chest now. Why? Because then I start believing you. For a second, he just looked at me. Really looked at me. Then his expression softened in a way that made my chest ache immediately. Kyle, he said quietly. I mean every word. The room went painfully silent after that. Not awkward. Just honest. Too honest. Because I realized I believed him. And that was terrifying. Vincent must have seen something on my face because he sat up slightly, brushing his fingers carefully through my hair. You know what's weird? He asked softly. What? I usually hate this kind of thing. I frowned. What kind of thing? Getting attached fast. The word attached made my stomach flip. Vincent smiled faintly at my expression. But with you, he exhaled quietly. I don't know. It feels easy. There was that word again. Easy. Except nothing about this should have felt easy. We were two strangers who got thrown into the same room because of a booking mistake. That was it. And yet somehow lying beside him now felt more natural than most relationships I'd had. I looked over at him carefully. What happens after tomorrow? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Vincent's expression changed instantly. More serious now. He leaned back against the headboard slowly. You mean when we go home? Yeah. He looked at me for a long second before answering. I don't know. Honest. No fake promises. No pretending. And somehow that honesty hurt more. I stared down at the blanket between us. Right. Vincent immediately noticed the shift in my voice. Hey, he said quietly. I didn't look up. A second later, his fingers rested gently under my chin, making me meet his eyes again. Don't do that. Do what? Act disappointed before anything's even happened. I swallowed hard. That's not what I'm doing. It kind of is. He moved closer again, sitting beside me now instead of across the bed, close enough that our knees touched. I'm saying I don't know because I'm trying not to lie to you, he said softly. You live in Boston. I live in Seattle. Yeah. But I also know I really don't want this weekend to end. My chest tightened painfully fast. Vincent's thumb brushed lightly across my jaw again. And judging by your face, he murmured, you don't want it to end either. I laughed quietly because he was right. Completely right. A little. We met at the worst possible time. Or the best. I looked at him. Vincent smiled softly. Then he kissed me again before I could respond. Slow. Warm. The kind of kiss that felt less desperate now and more meaningful. Like neither of us was trying to ignore this anymore. My hand slid automatically against the side of his neck as he leaned into me. And honestly, I could have stayed like that forever. Eventually, Vincent pulled back slightly, forehead resting against mine again. You know what I was thinking earlier today? He asked quietly. That you're obsessed with me? That too. I snorted softly. He smiled against my mouth. But seriously, what? When you walked into the room earlier, his eyes flicked down my face slowly. I forgot what I was saying for a second. That happened because you were shirtless and evil. Vincent laughed quietly. No, it happened because I wanted to kiss you. My heartbeat immediately betrayed me again. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You're cute when you get nervous, he murmured. I'm literally lying in bed with you, and somehow you still have the upper hand. That's because you're easy to fluster. I hate you. No, you don't. Unfortunately, he was right about that too. The last day came way too fast. I hated that immediately. By morning, the reality of leaving sat quietly between us no matter how much we tried pretending otherwise. Vincent was already awake when I opened my eyes. He was lying on his side facing me, one arm tucked under his head, just watching me. That's creepy, I muttered sleepily. His mouth twitched. You drool. I absolutely do not. You absolutely do. I groaned and buried my face in the pillow while he laughed softly beside me. God, I was going to miss that laugh. The realization hit hard enough that I went quiet instantly. Vincent noticed, obviously. He always noticed. His hand slid gently across my arm beneath the blankets. You okay? Yeah. Liar. I sighed and rolled onto my back. Sunlight spilled across the hotel room now, soft and golden through the huge windows. Our last morning. Vincent stared at the ceiling beside me for a second before speaking quietly. I changed my flight. I turned toward him immediately. What? Later tonight instead of this afternoon. My heartbeat stumbled. Why? His expression softened slightly, like the answer was obvious. To stay with you longer. Yeah, that one nearly ruined me. I looked away quickly before he could see exactly how hard that hit. Too late, probably. Vincent shifted closer immediately, his fingers brushing lightly against mine on the bed. Hey, you can't just say stuff like that. Why not? Because then I start thinking this means something. Silence. Then Vincent said quietly, it does mean something. I looked back at him slowly. He didn't look uncertain anymore. Didn't look nervous. Just honest. I know this is insane timing, he continued softly. And I know we barely know each other. But I haven't stopped thinking about you since the lobby. My chest tightened painfully fast. Vincent laughed quietly under his breath. Honestly, you're kinda all over my head at this point. I covered my face briefly with one hand. This is ridiculous. Probably. But I really like you, Kyle. There it was. Simple. Real. No games. And somehow that scared me more than anything else. Because I liked him too. Way too much. I lowered my hand slowly. Yeah, I admitted quietly. I really like you too. Vincent smiled then. Not smug. Not teasing. Just genuinely happy. And somehow that expression felt more dangerous than all the flirting. He leaned over and kissed me softly once. Then again, slow enough that it made my chest ache immediately. When he pulled back, he stayed close. So, he murmured, what do we do now? I laughed quietly. No idea. Helpful. I'm trying. Vincent grinned against my mouth before kissing me one more time. Then suddenly his phone buzzed loudly beside the bed. He groaned dramatically and grabbed it. I watched his expression change as he checked the screen. What? Vincent stared at the phone for a second longer, then looked at me. You are not going to believe this. What? The hotel accidentally charged me for a honeymoon suite. I blinked, then burst out laughing so hard I nearly fell off the bed. Vincent laughed too, shaking his head. This place is unbelievable. Honeymoon suite is kind of fitting now, though. He narrowed his eyes immediately. Oh, now who's flirting? I learned from the best. Vincent climbed over me suddenly, pinning me lightly against the mattress while I laughed helplessly beneath him. You like it? I really do. The words came out softer than expected, more honest. And suddenly we weren't joking anymore. Vincent looked down at me quietly for a second. His hand slid gently along my side beneath my shirt. Not teasing now, just close, comfortable. You know what I realized? He murmured. What? If that booking mistake never happened, his thumb brushed slowly against my waist. I would have walked past you and never known any of this. I swallowed hard. Yeah. And that feels insane now. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache all over again. Because I understood exactly what he meant. Some random hotel mistake had somehow dropped the right person directly into my life. And now the thought of leaving him already hurt. Vincent kissed me again softly before resting his forehead against mine. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. You sound very confident. I'm choosing confidence over emotional collapse. I laughed softly. Then his expression turned suspicious. What? You laughed at emotional collapse way too fast. Because that's exactly where I'm headed. Vincent smiled faintly before brushing his fingers through my hair again. Good, he murmured. Good. Means I'm not the only one. We spent the rest of the afternoon pretending we weren't both quietly falling apart about leaving, which mostly meant avoiding serious conversation while staying ridiculously close to each other anyway. Vincent sat beside me in a booth at some little pizza place 3 blocks from the hotel, his knee pressed against mine under the table the entire time. Not accidental. Definitely not accidental. You're staring again, he said without looking up from the menu. I'm literally reading. You've been on the same page for 5 minutes. I sighed dramatically. You're impossible. And yet nothing. Vincent finally looked up, smiling slowly. And yet you still look at me like that. My stomach flipped immediately. I grabbed my water just to do something with my hands. You're very smug for someone who accidentally cuddled me the first night. That was survival. That was spooning. That was teamwork. I laughed hard enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. God, I was going to miss this. Miss him. The thought kept hitting me in random moments all day, like my brain refused to let me ignore it anymore. Because now that we were close to leaving, every little thing suddenly felt important. The way Vincent reached for my hand automatically while we crossed the street. The way his thumb brushed against my wrist absent-mindedly while we walked. The way he kept looking at me like he was trying to memorize my face. By the time we made it back to the hotel that evening, neither of us was joking as much anymore. Reality had finally caught up. Our flights were in a few hours. Vincent dropped onto the edge of the bed with a long exhale while I stood near the window staring out at the city. Chicago glowed beneath us. Cars moving. People everywhere. The whole world continuing normally, while my life somehow felt completely rearranged after one stupid hotel booking mistake. You're doing it again, Vincent said softly behind me. Doing what? Thinking too loud. I smiled faintly without turning around. You really need new material. I really need you to come here. That did something dangerous to my chest immediately. I turned slowly. Vincent was watching me carefully now, elbows resting on his knees. Not teasing. Not playful. Just honest. And suddenly the distance between us felt unbearable. I crossed the room without thinking about it. Vincent's hands settled automatically at my waist the second I reached him, pulling me gently between his knees. The familiarity of it hit me hard, like we'd already done this forever. He looked up at me quietly. I don't want to leave like this, he admitted. Like what? Like this ends here. My heartbeat stumbled. Vincent leaned his forehead lightly against my stomach for a second before looking up again. I know long distance is hard, he continued softly. And I know this sounds insane because we literally met 3 days ago. I held my breath. But I want to try. Everything in me went completely still. Because somehow that possibility had felt too dangerous to hope for. You mean that? I asked quietly. Vincent looked almost offended. Kyle. His hands tightened slightly at my waist. I changed my flight for you. Right. Fair point. I laughed softly, mostly because emotion was clogging my throat suddenly. Vincent smiled faintly. Was that a yes? I looked down at him. At the guy who'd gone from complete stranger to somehow feeling important in less than one weekend. Then I brushed my fingers carefully through his hair and kissed him before answering. Vincent kissed me back instantly, pulling me closer until I was practically in his lap. When we finally pulled apart, both of us smiling a little stupidly now, I rested my forehead against his. Yes, I whispered. His entire face softened. And honestly, that reaction alone made every ounce of fear worth it. Vincent laughed quietly under his breath. Okay, good. Good. Yeah. He brushed his nose lightly against mine. Because I already started mentally introducing you as the guy I met because of the dumbest hotel mistake in human history. I snorted. That's a terrible love story. No, he murmured softly. It's actually kind of perfect. And somehow, sitting there in that messed up hotel room with the city glowing outside and Vincent holding me like he already planned on keeping me, I thought maybe he was right.